Okay, so I just want to introduce myself and the Entrepreneurship Club real quick. My name is Andrew Linkfoot. I'm the Director of Communications for the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Club here at Purdue. For those of you who are members of the club, thank you for coming. And for everyone who isn't, please sign up at entrepreneur.com. It's free to join, no membership fees, no dues, but pretty much we'll just send you emails about cool events like this. And we got a couple networking events coming up this weekend and over the next couple weeks. So sign up at entrepreneur.com, and I'll let these guys from Hirebrite take it from here.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. You guys excited about startups?
Woo.
Yeah? All right. So my name is Kazra, and along with my colleague Rolly, we're the co-founders of Hirebrite, which, as you guys know, is a platform that connects students at top universities to some of the most promising startups across the country. So just to give a little bit of context, we're actually in the middle of doing a university kind of startup tour, going around to a bunch of universities. Last week we were at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Cornell, going to Carnegie Mellon. So we're excited to be here at Purdue as well. So just by way of background, Rolly and I met when we were in college. So he studied computer science, I studied economics, and we both went down very traditional career paths. So Rolly did a couple of years as a product manager at a large technology company, and I worked in investment banking and then venture capital investing. But over time, we both realized that we're passionate about startups, so we started working for other people's startups. And then we wanted to launch our own, and we realized that there's not a great way for you guys to currently connect with awesome startups. So we started Hirebrite about a year ago. We did a pilot program last spring with about 5 schools. We got a bunch of students, full-time jobs and summer internships. So now we're doing a bigger tour, kind of getting more schools on board. We're up to about 15 schools right now, startups kind of all over the country. And we're excited to be here. So we're going to spend the next 30, 40 minutes kind of telling you everything we've learned and the things that you guys should consider when thinking about your careers and startup careers in particular. So over the last year, we've talked to over 100 recent grads about how they made the decision to go work for a startup instead of a large company and the things that they've learned and what you guys should keep in mind. So the first thing that we always hear about when we talk to recent grads is the office space. I mean, you guys know that startups are kind of quirky. They have very different office spaces. So we're going to kind of share a couple of examples of that. The thing that they're even more excited about is the people that they work with and the things that they're working on. And oftentimes that means that they're building things, they're building products, and really helping to kind of change industries, change the way that people currently behave. And then finally, we'll share a couple of the kind of quirky benefits that these recent grads have really started to appreciate having spent some time working in startups. Then the last thing is just some advice. You know, these guys were in your shoes not too long ago, so we asked them, you know, if you were a student kind of considering different paths for your career, what advice would you want to have heard? So I'm going to introduce you to 3 recent grads, and we're going to kind of use their stories to talk about startup careers. So meet Alicia. She is a 2008 grad from Columbia, where she studied computer engineering. She had some experience at Goldman Sachs working in their technology group, but she's currently a software engineer at a company called Rent the Runway. Any of the ladies in here familiar with that company? All right, we got 1, 2. All right. So basically, if you're a girl and you have a formal event, you need to get a dress, right? But getting a dress can be very expensive. So these guys they built the Netflix for fashion. You can go on their website, pick out a dress you like, rent it at 10% of the retail price. They'll send you a couple different sizes. You wear it, you ship it back, they dry clean it, they put it back on the rack. They were founded in 2009, and they're headquartered in New York City and in Soho, which is sort of the fashion capital of New York. Second recent grad is Jihan. So she's a 2010 grad in computational biology from Brown. So she also did a lot of computer science work. She had some experience in Cisco, working at Cisco during college, and she's currently a software engineer, a mobile software engineer, at a company called Blue Jeans. So Blue Jeans is a multi-point interoperable video conferencing system. So what does that mean? That means that if you're on Skype, if you're on Google Chat, whatever system you're on, you can talk to anyone else using any system. So I can talk to Rolly if I'm using Skype and using Google Chat. So basically, they're the first ones who've done that and made it really easy for people that use video conferencing. So these guys were founded in 2009. They're out on the West Coast. They've raised $50 million from 3 of the top venture capital firms in the world. And the last recent grad, so he's a little bit older. So Brett is a computer engineering grad from Chico State, graduated in 2005. He had some experience at a couple of larger mobile tech companies, but he's currently an Android engineer at a company called Imprivata. So they're on the West Coast as well, and essentially what they do is they build software products for the healthcare industry. So they make it easy for doctors to talk to each other and talk to nurses, and basically collaborate and build security solutions. So they currently have a ton of users all over the world, and again, they're backed by one of the top venture capital firms in the world. So, having introduced our recent grads, I'm going to hand it over to Rolika to start telling you about the things that we've learned from them.
Thanks, Gus. So, over 100 recent grads we've been talking to. We've basically interviewed them about what they've been doing this past year in their startup space. And we'll go over kind of the 5 things that Colin pointed out before when we interviewed them. And it's like Disney for nerds. One of them said that, and it just clicked. It's kind of the first thing that they always talk about is, yeah, it's a fun space. It's kind of a quirky environment, like Kazra said. The first thing that comes up is there's no cubicles. It's basically a flat working environment where you have like your own little space. You can work on a hacky sack or a beanbag in the corner, put headphones on, and hack away for like 3-4 hours on whatever project you have. Or just work in a conference room in a war room style with like 3 of your colleagues on the same team. So a little less bureaucracy, a little bit more open spaces, and I'll show you some examples of that. And then they always come up, like the most common thing that always comes up is like the fun they have in some form or fashion. They have a game night, mahjong, poker, Xbox, whatever it may be, and some form of like crazy food, whether it's like a wall full of Mountain Dew or a personal chef or just like pastries and just all these great things they eat and kind of to keep them in the office all the time. So it's kind of an interesting environment. And they also have like really quirky things. Who's heard of Airbnb? Like about a quarter. So that's like one of the hot startups on the West Coast. They just had a big bouncy house outside their startup, and everyone just went outside and like started bouncing in a house. It was fun. And they did it on a Friday afternoon. So this is kind of the more I'm going to say stereotypical stuff you hear about the startups. So I just wanted to cover that first. And finally, it's very social and collaborative. Instead of setting up a half-hour meeting with someone in another team, I'll most likely take off my headphones, yell at them, and say, Jim, do you have a moment? Go over there, hack on whatever the problem is, bang it out in 5 minutes, and then get back to work. So it's kind of everyone just kind of helping each other. No, it's not so many emails and just like kind of working on the projects collaboratively in an open space. And Alicia's the first example of that. She's in New York City. She's got a very nice big office. You see kind of a communal kitchen table. They try to have lunch every day together so that they kind of talk about what they're working on that day and kind of build camaraderie. It's kind of a family style lunch. And they also have kind of dinners as well. They actually shut off on a regular time. So one of the things we hear a lot is that people think startups are working like 100 hours a week. And that's not always the case. Like at 5 p.m. they're already goofing around, they're gonna go home soon. So I put like Nerf guns or whatever, someone's like goofing around. So they work very regular hours. And a unique perk for Alicia is that on the bottom right you see kind of their showroom. They're dealing with 40,000 dresses and counting right now in their warehouse. And they have samples of that. So as an engineer or a salesperson or whoever in the company, you can go and see the things that customers are actually touching and feeling and kind of see them for yourself in the office. And then you mentioned Jihan. She's at Blue Jeans out on the West Coast, and they're just kind of a very fun environment. It's she's got, who's cooking fruit? Yeah, pool, ping pong, foosball, typical things you'd see at a startup. Food trucks. Then you got really social events. They just had a Halloween party, and typical stuff you see, but the one thing that kind of stands out at Blue Jeans is their video conferencing software. And so instead of phone calls, they try to do video chat with their clients, with each other, all the time. So they actually eat their own dog food is kind of the slogan they use. So it's not too, like whenever we've talked to them, we've done video chat every time. So they try to use their own product. It's kind of unique. And so they really, their eyes kind of, they're kind of over that within the first few months. It's kind of a fun environment, great. That's an allure. But where they really get excited when they talk to us is about the projects they're working on and the people they're working with. And one of the biggest things I keep hearing all the time is, I've done more in 6 months than I did at my old job at a big company. So we hear that over and over again. You'll probably do more in your first year at a startup coming out of here than you would in 2 years at a large company. Actually, a little bit about my background, I went to a large company right away after college. And I kind of have seen both sides. And you have a ton more responsibility and a ton more projects. And the reason being is there's a short development cycle at these startups. Instead of delivering something that's going to ship in 18 months, this thing you're working on with your team is probably going to ship in a matter of weeks or months. So you're kind of going to see it evolve very quickly, and when you're done with it, you're going to ship it, you're going to work on something else. So in a year, you're probably going to touch 3 or 4 things, and it's going to be great for your resume, it's going to be great for your professional career, it's going to be great for you learning. So you're going to be constantly exposed to a lot of different projects over the course of that year. The other thing we see is that the organizations are flat. I mean, how many of you have heard this term, like flat organization? Do you? So pretty much means it's not like you have a boss who has a boss who has a boss who has a boss who has a boss who's the CEO. It's usually you're all flat, you're all on the same team. It's not atypical for them to have like 14 engineers on one team, have that person report to like a product design guy who reports to the CEO. So you can go down the hall and talk to anyone. There's no bureaucracy. You're not trying to make a name for yourself on the team in order to get promoted, because there's nowhere to get promoted to. Essentially, you're just trying to do as good a job as you can and help your team achieve your goals. So it's kind of, it breeds a different type of work ethic among the teams. And I'll show you some examples of that in a few slides. There we go. And the other thing that we see all the time is, some of these roles are software engineer or project manager or operations coordinator. And if you're at a startup and you're in one of these roles, there's no reason why you can't jump from that to something else. So it's not atypical for you to be a software engineer and try to be a product design person for a good 2-3 weeks. It's just a matter of walking down the hall, talking to the team, saying, hey, I'm really interested in this. Can I give it a try? So you didn't have to do any paperwork to transfer departments, which I've done at a big company. You didn't have to apply. You didn't have, it's just, hey, can I help you guys for a few weeks? And all of a sudden you get exposed to things that you would have never been exposed to had you been in kind of a more bureaucratic environment. So Alicia, she actually is very collaborative in her work day every day. She's got a team of 4, and they work with a warehouse team that has all the dresses. They work with a data analytics team that's seeing what users who are renting the dresses are actually doing. So she's bringing those 2 together and making sure that essentially you're having the dresses move out of the warehouse at the right time and buying more dresses, and basically it's a whole supply chain issue that she's trying to manage. Because the warehouse people are kind of just dealing with the infrastructure issues of, I need to ship this or put it back on the rack. Whereas the data analytics people are saying, wow, a lot of people are looking at Gucci dresses. We should probably order more of those. So it's her job to go over to the warehouse and say, we need more of those. So stock those. I think Kazu, you mentioned she was like at Goldman Sachs Technology. She's technical, so for you technical folks, she touches both the front end and the back end, which means she's actually doing some of the business logic underneath the covers, and she's actually touching things that are on renttherunway.com too, so you can actually see some of her work. And then the Friday Power Hour pair programming. Say that 4 times. How many of you know what pair programming is? Okay, so it's kind of this thing that's grown tremendously in the software industry in the last 5 years, or you could say more. And essentially it means that you sit in front of the computer with a partner and you take turns working on one project at a time. Happens a lot when you're programming. And on Friday, what happens is she sits down with someone who's on a completely different team than she's on. And she either works on her problem or on their problem. And they kind of get to know each other, and she gets to see a whole other side of the business. So just for an hour or 2 every Friday, she's exposed to something completely different every week. And that person gets help, or she gets some help on whatever. She gets a new perspective. And finally, her big thing is she's always trying to maximize the amount of time that the dresses are out. You always want the dresses to be rented. So you want them off the rack, delivered, and then back and put back on the rack and cleaned as quickly as possible to maximize the churn rate. So it's kind of a series of small problems that kind of maximize the amount of dress rentals you have on Rent the Runway. And since she's working on this day in, day out, one thing you'll notice is short development cycles. She'll make a fix and it'll be pushed to production. Whatever she did that week, it'll be on Rent the Runway live. She didn't have to wait 3 months, 18 months. She gets to see customers actually see what she did that week right away. And I think, Cosmo, you mentioned there are like 30 million in funding. I mean, this website's touching millions of users every day. So it's kind of really cool to see people actually use your products. And Jihan, she's on a mobile team. It's just four people on that team. She's iOS centric. And the CTO, we talked to the CTO actually a couple weeks ago, and he used the term bleed around the edges, meaning essentially she's on that core team of 4 people, but most of the time she's like loaned out to other teams. So the teams are kind of a loose guidelines. So it's not too uncommon for you to work at Blue Jeans and constantly be like shifting teams. And to that effect, they have these quarterly hackathons. And how many of you know what a hackathon is? Heard the term? Okay. A lot of you guys. So essentially, they'll get together once a quarter throughout the year, and they'll start building something, a new feature for the site. And usually that's only some programmers getting together to build that out. But they invite the sales folks, the marketing folks, some of the biz dev folks, and they get to be on the team as well, and they get to give input and work on the project with them. So at the end of like that weekend where they did the hackathon, it'll be kind of a collaborative effort where the engineers were working on something that maybe the marketing people will actually put to use in a couple weeks. So it's very collaborative. Everyone works together. There you go. And I love these terms they use. It's basically you're on Google Chat and you can video chat with Skype folks. But it's a very complex issue. It's something that no one's done yet. And they're doing very gracefully with a big emphasis on having high quality video and audio and having that be reliable and consistent. So it's there. If you go there, you're kind of going to a place that's breaking ground in something. They're not a Me Too company. They've raised a total of 50 million. They just closed the latest 25 million a couple months ago, backed by NEA and other amazing venture capital companies. Usually when you see that a company is backed by these great venture capitalists, it's a good sign. If you go there, it's got a really good growth trajectory. And I'll kind of stop there. How many of you know Penny Arcade? I've heard of Penny Arcade. Awesome. Okay, so some of you guys know it. It's a webcomic. You can go to penny-arcade.com. It's been around 10 years, I think. It's one of the most popular webcomics on the internet. And the reason I put it up is because I think it kind of shows something about startups. So it says, didn't you say that you saw a hippo? And I said, no, I made a hippo. Yeah, but you saw it after you made it, right? There's a crucial distinction. I didn't just look over and see some hippo. I saw where hippo was not and said, no, this will not do. So it kind of introduces the idea of the builder spirit, where you see that something's not done yet, and you just roll up your sleeves and get it done. And that's kind of what you see prevalent across all these startups. This overwhelming feeling of anything's possible, and let's just get together and bang it out and do it and build the next great big thing. And I like to bring up the idea of Facebook. These guys are thinking about changing markets and the way the world works. A few years ago, people didn't think of liking anything, and now we do. So the idea is not just about producing revenue, but also producing something that's changing the way the world fundamentally works. And that really resonates with a lot of the students that we've interviewed. And finally, they love, again, the fact that they get to work on things at these startups that get pushed out to thousands, if not millions of users all the time. So you know your work is getting used and viewed all the time. And I'll give you an example. So Brett, he was at Imprivata, who works on secure communication in the healthcare industry. And he actually is working on a platform that makes it easy for you to share healthcare information. And they just created the world's first free HIPAA-compliant text messaging solution. So back a few years back, doctors were just texting each other, very sensitive data and not in a very secure fashion. So now doctors are using their solution to kind of collaborate with each other on patients and their health records and all that that they need to effectively treat the patient. They're the first to do that. And that's a team of 14 developers at Imprivata focused just on mobile. So sometimes you have a small team that can have a really big impact and deliver something that hasn't been delivered yet. And this is a sign, a billboard that's actually out in the Bay Area. I don't know if you guys can see this, it's a little fuzzy, but the guy is in the bathroom on a conference call. And that's kind of their big plug. Like, crap that that happens on mute doesn't happen on video. So you should start video chatting. So you start really engaging with people. And that's on the 101 out in San Francisco. So she's actually working on something that's going to change the way we communicate. Hopefully we're all video chatting more and more. Just like I am, or instant message has become ubiquitous. Hopefully their goal is that they're able to bring all these islands together and that video chat becomes ubiquitous. Whether you're on Yahoo Messenger or Skype or Google Chat or whatever it may be, we're all going to be able to video chat each other seamlessly all the time. And the really interesting thing about Jihan is that she's actually been there less than a year, and she's driving their mobile strategy. She's architecting the mobile software and helping design the product, and she's a software engineer. So again, this notion of wearing multiple hats is really prevalent. She's taking on a ton of responsibility, and she graduated in 2010 from Brown. So it's this thing where in a matter of just a small window of time, you can become a leader and take on a lot of responsibility. And she's building an iOS product right now. And she's also going out and collecting user feedback on the product, which is I've been a product manager at other companies, and that's the job of the product manager. So right there in those last 30 seconds I've talked about, I've described things that usually takes 4 different people at a large company to do, and she's doing all of them, touching all of them. So that's just a really impressive thing that she's doing at that startup. And finally, I'm going to go through Alicia, and then I'll hand it off to Khazra to kind of finish it off with a couple other examples. Alicia's, she likes to say she's democratizing fashion. Before, you had to have a ton of money in order to have high fashion and have a Gucci dress or whatever the brand is these days. But now, for 10% of the cost, anyone can go and have a nice dress for a weekend. So that's actually changing the way that people are buying things. And she's also giving that data back to the designers. So she'll go back to Gucci and say, this is what people are actually doing. They're checking you out this often. Or they're renting you this often. Or they're looking at your page or your product this often, but they're not converting and they're not actually buying. They're getting this other brand. So now the fashion industry has all this data analytics data that's coming from Rent the Runway to kind of tell them how people are making decisions in the fashion industry. So that's kind of a big thing for her. And she loves that. Again, they're huge. They've grown tremendously in the last 18 months. And everything she does every week, millions of people get to see it. So it's built to scale. It's not just a small project. She's building something that's really heavy duty and touching a lot of people. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kaz, who will tell you more about these.
Does anyone have any questions? How many of you are looking for summer internships? Okay. How many of you are looking for business roles? Okay. Some undecided hands over there. All right. So we're going to run through the last 2 sections here and then wrap up. But this next section is sort of the things that these recent grads have learned just by virtue of being in the startup scene for a couple of years now. So basically, one of the things we hear over and over is, from students, is a concern that you're going to a company that isn't necessarily very well established, is small. How do you build a network? Who is sort of the community that you collaborate with? But the reality is that we're hearing over and over from these recent grads that once you join a startup, you're actually joining a much broader community. So, everything that Rolly mentioned within a startup is very collaborative, but that same characteristic describes how startups interact with each other. So there are startup hubs popping up all over the country, which we'll kind of mention in more detail later, but there's a tremendous sense of community and collaboration and just building cool things and helping each other in between these startups.
We're based in Chicago. I think we've said it to a few people, and that's a startup. That's like one of the top 5 startup hubs. And whenever we have an issue with social media, marketing, anything, we go over to startups that are based near us and ask them for advice. So it's kind of, you're part of a bigger family. As long as you're at a startup hub, you can go and ask for advice from other startups. And most of them aren't your competitors. Like 99% are not your direct competitors. So you can go and ask them anything. So it's actually really nice.
So the next thing that always comes up is that because you're working in a startup, because you don't have 100 people, 1,000 people kind of in various departments handling everything, a lot of times you're kind of forced to do things yourself. So for example, Rolly and I, we have a relatively small team. So we have to do the marketing. We have to go get this poster made. We have to, make sure we're getting the employers, et cetera. You're just, by necessity, forced to do things that you would never otherwise be forced to do, which is a great learning experience. And then finally, a lot of times, what startups are doing is very innovative. It's never been done before. So you literally have to sit there and think, how can I make this possible? You can go to other startups and kind of see how they're doing something similar and kind of brainstorm something and actually go do it and test it and see if it works. So just a couple of examples. For Alicia at Rent the Runway, their team's motto is fail loudly. So she gets a project, she's kind of given a timeline, she owns it. If she's not going to get it done or if she doesn't know how to do it, she is supposed to say very loudly to her teammates, like, I'm not going to get this done, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then everyone kind of jumps in, chimes in, and suggests ideas and helps her kind of get it done. And then the last thing that she mentions is that she gets the voice of preferences. So if she wants to work on a particular thing that she's not getting exposure to, she can definitely say that, and the next time she's given a project, that's what she'll be working on. And then finally, we mentioned the location in Soho in Manhattan. And then for Jihan, her emphasis is that working in a startup and working in Blue Jeans in particular is a very personal environment. So these people have a ton of fun. They know each other personally outside of work. And so it's a very open environment. You can just get up from your desk, walk down the hall, walk into the CEO's office, and share your ideas if you have them. And then and the other point is that this sense of community again, it's a very diverse working place. So there are people with PhDs, there are people doing marketing, you interact with the sales teams, et cetera. So it's a very diverse kind of environment and lots of opportunities to be social. And then for Brett, it's freedom and flexibility are huge. So he gets to work from home half the time. He really, as long as he's doing a good job building what he's supposed to be building, he can do whatever he wants or whenever he wants. And he really takes advantage of that. And then, one thing in particular about his team is that it's really a startup within a startup. So he's working within the mobile team on the West Coast. And Imprivata is, it's a fairly late stage startup, but they kind of act as a hub of innovation on the mobile side internally. So this last section is about you guys. So what are the questions that some of you are thinking through? So the first question we get a lot is, should I go and work for another startup, or should I work on my own? Maybe some of you have your own ideas. Does that describe? I know that describes Rohan. Anyone else in here kind of have their own ideas and think about launching it? Okay. So the piece of advice that we get from recent grads is it's great that you have your own idea, but go and work for another startup first, because you're going to learn about how to do things that you can then go and apply to your own startup, and the chances of you being successful are just much higher. The second thing we hear is, all right, I have heard about the startup thing. I think it's kind of interesting. How do I actually know if it's right for me? And it's an important question because it's not right for everyone. A lot of the things that we mentioned may not be a good fit for you. So how do you actually know? You have to try it. Go get an internship, find a startup that you like, and just do something for them. See what it's like. And then the last point is, for those of you who are absolutely interested in startups, how do you stand out? There aren't that many startups out there. There are a lot of people trying to vie for those jobs. How do you stand out? The way you stand out is you get to know these companies. So these companies are very small, they're lean, they don't have a ton of resources. Like, every team member at a startup has like a million things on the list of things to do that they can't get to just because they don't have time, they don't have other team members to help them out with it. So you, as a student, can kind of get to know the company, get to know some of the challenges and things that they may not notice themselves or may not be working on, and go and email the CEO and say, hey, have you guys considered this? Like, here's something I put together. I talked to a couple potential customers of yours, and this idea came up. They'll really appreciate that, even if you're totally off. Doesn't matter. So we're going to talk through kind of two examples. From Alicia's perspective at Run the Runway, her advice is just go and experiment. You have the rest of your life to go work for a Google or a large company. Go and try it in a startup. You might like it. Another point that she mentions is, so, you may not have traditionally thought about going and working in fashion, but give it a shot. I mean, not necessarily fashion, but give new industries a shot. You have a lot of skills, apply them in a new way. And then finally, at Blue Jeans, so Jihan's advice is that there are so many companies outside of the large companies that come to campus that kind of do the dinners, send people on campus, etc. If she hadn't kind of been open-minded, she wouldn't have come across Blue Jeans, which in 2012 has been ranked one of the best places to work in the Bay Area. So just keep an open mind.
Third, right?
Yeah, they were ranked third in the Bay Area in terms of best places to work. So with that said, just a couple of things in terms of what we're seeing in jobs on the platform. So about 65% of the roles on Hirebrite and in the startup world in general are technically oriented. So back and front end developers, you'll see mobile developers, testing and user experience as well. And then the remainder are business roles. So business development, sales, and marketing tend to be sort of the primary three roles. So if you look at these, you'll notice that you're either building a product on the technical side, or as on the business side, you're selling it. You're selling what your team has built. So keep that in mind as you think about how you can add value to a startup team. Does anyone have any questions about these roles? What any of them mean or anything like that? Yes?
What exactly is analyst role?
You want to take that one, Roland?
Yeah, so a lot of times that has to do with kind of strategy for the company, what we should be building, what are the trends. A lot of times it's a kind of a catch-all, but you'll do some data analytics and kind of do some reporting that might go to management that says, our customers are doing this, we should probably be servicing this way.
Analyst.
Yeah, it's very analytical. That's the term, yeah, analyst. But it's kind of it could kind of turn into a lot of different things. And a lot of companies, you go in as analyst, and maybe one of the projects you work on is social media, and you really like it, and you're really good at it, and then you become the social media marketer. So it's kind of a on-ramp, as you want. Good question.
Ron?
What would you recommend for the business people like when running our interview for these startups? Because 65% is more technical, so obviously more technical people being hired. That's more based on your resume and what you know. When you're on your business side, how do you sell yourself to these companies when you're in your grad?
So one way to answer that is think about, how are startups thinking about it? And it's really two questions. It's, how smart is this person, right? Because you need to be very smart at a startup. You're going to be thrown into roles that you may not have experience in. You just have to kind of figure it out for yourself. And then the second thing is, how passionate is this person about the company? So, if you're all about money, you're probably not going to be happy to start. You're going to get paid a bit less than you would at Google or Facebook or other large company. So you have to be very passionate about what the company's doing and your role as part of it. So how do you convey that? I mean, I guess, being smart, you're going to a top school. So then the passion part becomes really important, right? How do you convey that? The way you convey that is, it goes back to what we were saying before, knowing the company really, really well. So there's a good example. There's a guy, John Exley, I think he may be a senior right now in college. He was dead set on working for one particular startup out on the West Coast, and he was going to do anything he could to get an internship there. So what he did before he even reached out to the company is he got to know the product really, really well. He went out and put the product in front of 50 potential customers and interviewed all of them on feedback. He collected all that feedback, put together a presentation, and sent it over to the company. He went on Twitter, tweeted to the management team. He was just all over them, and he just really, really impressed them, and he got the internship. So that, I mean, that's sort of an extreme example, but it's that flavor of kind of things.
Let me give you another example. That's kind of like that. If you could do that, that will get you in like the top 10% of applicants for sure. If you really want to work there, do something like that. Be creative, because they think if you'll do that now, then you're going to do that when you're in here. And we need really nifty people in here because we don't have enough resources. You're going to be doing a lot of different things, so I need really creative and crafty people. But there's a video game company that's on our platform. It's Greed. We didn't talk about them today, but you can check them out. They're hiring right now full-time and interns. And I talked to their product manager who interviews all the students, and he was like, Rolly, you'd be surprised. A lot of students just apply here, they get interviews, and they don't know our product at all. They produce mobile video games. They're one of the largest mobile video game developers in the world. They're based out of Japan, they're huge. And the reason we have them on the platform is because they actually have a San Francisco kind of a hub where they're growing it from 40 to several hundred software developers. It's kind of like a little mini startup experiment they have out there. And he's like, no one, like 90% of the students that come in, they don't even, I'm like, what's your favorite game that we have? Like, and like, what was your experience playing it? They have no idea, like, what the company does. They haven't sat down and used the product more than 5 minutes, and they flew out to the West Coast, and they're interviewing with them. It's like a waste of your time and my time, he tells me. It's like, get to know the company. And if you really want to work there, at least spend a little bit of time with the product, and that will get you in the top 25 percentiles of applicants. If you're able to talk to me intelligently about what they're doing, if you're applying to Imprivata, go and do a bunch of reading on medical records and on what they're doing, and some of their competitors, and have an opinion on their competitors. And it's kind of a skill you learn to interview, right? I mean, this is the first time that you guys are entering the workforce, but you have a huge edge if you can talk a little bit about the product that they have. So definitely get to know, go on Rent the Runway and try to sign up and look at the things they have at least and have an opinion. And that'll really help you stand out.
Yes, so we'll do a quick demo of Hirebrite and how it can help you kind of, in this process. But one of the things we actually tell students to do in their messages to companies is suggest an idea, throw something out there. It might be totally crazy, totally wrong, but that's fine. They like that. And you'll actually be surprised how few students do that, even though we tell them. It's right up there, like in big print where they send their message, but few students do it. So if you do it, I mean, again, it's the bar isn't that high. So there are a lot of you who are looking for business roles in startups. Now, one thing to keep in mind is timing. So a lot of startups are younger companies, and therefore they can't predict a year in advance they're going to need an analyst to do XYZ project. So a lot of that hiring will start to happen a little bit later in the year. Actually, we do have a couple roles on Hirebrite right now that are business oriented for roles starting in summer 2013. But starting in January and kind of into the spring is when you'll see a lot more of those pop up. So let's talk for a second about startup hubs. So when we think startups, a lot of us think the West Coast, right? And that's true. I mean, the biggest startup hub is in San Francisco. There are tons of startups. The largest venture capital firms all have offices there. There's a ton going on. And in fact, two of the companies that we highlighted, so Blue Jeans and Imprivata, they're both headquartered there. But the reality is that right now is actually an awesome time for you guys because there are startup hubs popping up all over the country. So for example, Rent the Runway, which we mentioned, is in New York. But then, right in our backyard here, Chicago. So Chicago is actually in the top 5 in terms of startup communities. There's startups popping up all the time. There are investors from San Francisco actually investing in Chicago companies. And they've actually built something downtown called 1871, which is sort of a startup. People call it the startup hub of Chicago, and some even say it's of the Midwest. Basically, a big open space that houses 200 startups, all kind of building their product together. So keep that in mind. One of the things we do on Hirebrite is we try to make sure that we're getting startups kind of from all over the country because we know that you guys aren't necessarily going to want to go to San Francisco. So how do you guys get involved? We have the companies that we highlighted tonight are specifically looking for roles. They have specifically asked for Purdue students. So these are some of the roles. Go on Hirebrite.com, register and fill out your profile. We're actually going to do a quick demo, but it's fairly simple. It doesn't take very time, and just send them in a formal message. So one of the questions we get is, what does a message mean? Is it a cover letter? And the answer is no. Like, startups don't want traditional cover letters because cover letters say nothing. So send them a message that's a couple of sentences. Tell them who you are, and if you know anything about the company, say why you are excited about the company. And if you're ambitious, throw out an idea. All of you should do that.
Something cover letters say nothing is that they're very generic. So you can
Yeah.
go over, they're like a template, and we all do it. But if you send them a message that's, I don't know, a couple tweets, like, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 characters, that's tailored to them, they're more likely to listen. So they'd rather have a custom message than a template that they receive. You want to go through?
Yeah, let's do it. We're just going to do a quick demo to kind of show you what's behind the scenes at Hirebrite.com and how this can be helpful to you. So once you guys register as a student, you know, so we're currently, you'll notice when you go to the registration page, we're only open to 13 universities, and Purdue is one of those 13. So just, you know, doing a little bit of math, I mean, your probability of getting a job on Hirebrite is higher than sort of a, you know, a platform that's open to anyone. So you go on here, you upload your resume, and then we kind of walk you through a couple of short steps to enter some information about yourself. So you enter your name, you also enter a little bit about your school, so your major, whether you're an undergrad student or a graduate student, when you're graduating, your GPA, and then your resume is uploaded here as well. And then the second tab is
Right,
about...
You can click if you need visa assistance to let them know ahead of time.
So the second tab is job roles. So we're a big fan of using tokens on our system. So we give you kind of currency to kind of put on things that are important to you. So on the left, actually, so on the top here, we have the technical roles. So all the engineering roles. At the bottom is, you know, business development, sales, marketing, etc.
It's hard to see because of the projector, but the top boxes are blue for all the technical, and the bottom boxes are green for all the business sections.
Can you show us how you put some of the tokens on?
Yeah, so if I were to come in and I wanted a business role and looked at like these 6 roles, I'd say I'm really interested in analysts, I'll spend 3 tokens. Really interested in marketing social media, spend 6. Not really interested in sales, maybe interested in finance, I'll put 1 token. And then maybe operations coordinator. And then I'm going to put 1 more on biz dev. So it's kind of, you have 10 tokens, and you kind of spread them around and show your preferences based on what interests you the most. And then this gets saved, and this is how you get matched to the jobs that are on here and the startups that are on their platform. And you do the same thing on culture. You have these unique questions. These are actually questions that we interviewed all the startups when we were building the platform, and kind of these are the main questions that they usually ask. You know, what's important to you? Do you want to work in a fun social environment? Do you want to be able to work in a place that you don't have to be in the office every week? I just want to go in the office like a few times a week. You know, traditional hours, if that's important to you. You have to be home by 5 because you have, you know, family commitments. You know, do you just want a place that has really cool perks? I want a bouncy house. Awesome. Or do you just want to work with a team of rockstar entrepreneurs? They use the term rockstar a lot. Usually means like these guys are just the creme de la creme, like really great team. Like we're all from these great schools, and you've assembled the 5 smartest engineer students you possibly can, and now we're going to go build a secure messaging platform. Or you have a lot of startups that actually focus on philanthropic activity as well, and you can put that on there as well. So again, I spent my tokens, and that tells me my preference. I'm from Austin, and I'll put San Francisco, LA, or San Jose. I want to stay on the West Coast mostly. I'm looking for, maybe I'm not looking for full-time, I'm looking for summer internship or spring internship. And then up here, I'll go to technical. I'll pretend I'm, you know, still business. You know, I put business roles over there. I can fill out Microsoft Office. I've been working on Excel for a long time. And I'll say, you can rate yourself 1, 2, 3, 4. One being you have very limited knowledge, but you kind of done the tutorial at least. And then 4 being I could sit here and teach all y'all, for 3 hours a workshop on Excel. So I think I can. I did business analyst for a year, so all Excel. What else do we have here? A lot of times we'll have folks that have worked with Adobe Photoshop. And I'll say I've worked on that a little bit. I have touched HTML in the past. And then the other thing we also see is audio, video editing. I've edited videos and posted them online. I'm pretty good at that. And then those are all the required. And then projects, I worked on Hirebrite.com. This is kind of, I'll just pause there. This is kind of one of the most important things on the profile for you to really stand out. I've already seen some of the Purdue profiles that have signed up before presentation, and some of you have built little small projects, small businesses, just small sites. It could be a blog. It could be anything. It could be a technical project. Anything you've been involved in, mention it. Show off. It's for some of our companies. That's the first thing they go and see. Like, I want to see your portfolio. What have you touched? If you think you have a really good social media presence, mention a Facebook page you manage or a fan page and you've gotten to 500 likes and say how you did it. So this is a really nice place for you to kind of brag a bit off the resume. And for you technical folks, if you have a GitHub repository with your code, you can put your username here. And if you've passed, for Purdue, we just have a generic, the operating systems course. Update this. We usually, Blue Jeans and a couple other of the more technical companies want to know if you've passed certain courses at your school. So it's just generic right now if you've passed the OS course. And don't worry if you haven't. It's just nice to know for some of these companies. And finally, we have statement and addendum. This is where you can go the extra mile and kind of write a little personal essay that all the employers see. You show up higher in the search ranking for employers if you've written something. So you can sit here and what did I do here? I had add some random Wikipedia text. I'll just paste it in here, and you can see as you type, you'll see the average length that students usually write. So this is about average, and this is talk about something that you're an expert in, and tell me pretend I know nothing about it and explain it to me. So it's kind of a unique question that we've seen asked in interviews a lot. So they just wanted to see you kind of answer that on here. And finally, if you want to show off even more, tell us why you're excited to work in a startup, or tell us about a startup idea you have, or tell us about something you built that you want to show off, or maybe you have an old car, an old Corvette you've restored, anything that shows kind of your passions. Tell us about the next thing you want to learn. For me, maybe it's another computer language. I want to pick up Python. I haven't yet. And explain why. And then just kind of a catch-all. We couldn't tell from your resume. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? With that, you have everything filled out, and you can start finding jobs. And hopefully the internet's working. And these are some of the featured November job postings. Market X is in Chicago. You can click on that. I mentioned Gree. So here's their intern position, and some of the things you'll be working on. They're very they're looking for engineers with Python, JavaScript, PHP, HTML, CSS, Node.js, SQL experience. Be working on mobile video games. So let's say I wanted to intern at Rent the Runway. I could see their profile where they've talked about their pitch, they've talked about where they want to be in 5 years, some of the perks, Friday bagels, weeknight dinners, all that stuff. They talk about their culture, so you can kind of get to know what it's like to work there, and some of the other kind of nice things that they like to brag about. And you get a picture of their space. And some cultural things they've filled out, how much training and mentorship you could expect. How social are they? They tend to talk a lot around the office. Most of the time, are they doing 9 to 5 days, or how often do you have a 9 to 5 day that's very good hours? How often employees actually come to the office, which is fairly often, and how often they all get together and do some kind of volunteering, some kind of philanthropic activity. Again, just if you want to apply, submit an application is as easy as just sending them a message saying, introducing yourself. It's kind of a, I hate the term cover letter, but it's like a mini cover letter. Hey, I noticed you have this full-time job. I think I'm a good fit for this. Here's why. And just kind of do it in this space. And again, you can kind of see what the average length for some of these folks is for the message. So with that, I think we've covered kind of the whole flow for Hirebrite. If you're interested in these startups, there's flyers that have some of the big companies that are looking for interviews in the next few weeks. So definitely go online, send them a message, fill out your profile, and we're going to stick around in case you guys for Q&A and see if you guys have any more questions or want more pizza.
Any more questions?
Clear as mud.
Are
Yeah.
most of the companies you guys represent software-based, or is there a lot of variety?
For now, they're primarily software-based, software and web kind of tech-based.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on getting more positions that are for mechanical engineering and chemical. Because there's been actually a lot of students that come in. So, like, mechanical engineers will have some programming experience sometimes,
Yeah.
and they actually can be a good fit for some of these positions,
Yeah.
especially internships.
Yeah.
But we're looking for more positions like that, and found there's a big demand for it.
Okay.
Yes.
Since you said most of these companies are software companies, do they have their operations only in the US or do they outsource any of their work to India?
There's some examples that come to mind where they might have some technical operations across these, but for the most part, they tend to be in the U.S. entirely.
Yeah, it really just depends. They all have a little bit of a presence. I think Imprivata has a few. It's up to them how big the team is. Like Fab.com, which is a huge New York startup, has a huge team in India. Like, be surprised. As big as in New York City as it is in India. So it really depends on them. It varies a lot.
Yes.
What is Pair?
Pair, so this is sort of a relevant start for all you guys. If we came here as part of the tech group. Now, those of you who belong to a student group, you might sometimes hold events where you're looking for sponsors. Maybe you want t-shirts. Maybe you want free food at a local bar. Maybe you just want fundraising. You just want cash from sponsors like Gatorade or Verizon, etc. Pair is a website where you can go, kind of put your organization's name and get connected to all these sponsors around the country that are looking. They have cash and they want to kind of give it to groups like that. So basically, they're a Chicago startup. They have been around for a couple of years. Again, they're backed by a couple of top venture capital firms. They're looking primarily for local kind of campus ambassadors for now. I mean, if you guys are interested in that, definitely come and talk to me afterwards, and I can put you in touch with them. So they don't have a posting for Purdue right now, just because they're starting in Chicago, but they're definitely going to be expanding beyond those schools. So if you're interested in that, come and talk to me afterwards. And you had a question?
Do you know of any companies that you represent that are specifically looking for MBAs right now? Or
Sure. Are there a ton of MBAs in this room? A couple?
Yeah.
Okay. So typically they don't indicate that they're looking for MBAs. I mean, MBAs kind of fall in the business category.
Yeah.
So the roles that are up there that are business oriented, I mean, you guys are kind of eligible for.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I suppose so.
Okay. Yes.
How many of those companies are likely to start in the next year?
That's a good question, and there's not a clear there's not like a set answer that I can give. It's really company by company, and it tends to be the companies that are a little bit later stage, that have done, some sponsorship already. And actually, the companies that tend to have an international presence tend to be more open to that. So what I would suggest is, if there's a company that you're interested in, go on there and send them a message and ask them that question specifically. I mean, the messages all go directly to the company, and they'll get back to you.
That's the other thing. The messages are, it's most of the time when you go to apply somewhere, it's like you upload your resume, you're done, and it goes to like a database, and then they do like a keyword search, and they search like social media, and if you had social media on your resume, they'll pop up, they'll take a look at you, and that's kind of the process they follow. Whereas this is kind of a direct message to their HR department. So we've been working with these companies, and they want these messages. So kind of a backdoor in some cases to kind of get in touch with them.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for having us. We're going to stick around for a couple minutes if anyone has any specific questions. Happy to, and,
Thanks,
stick
guys.
around.